I hope my son's antics don't disturb you.
Madam, were it in my power to sentence him to 30 days hard labor, they would not disturb me in the slightest.
Smashing day for it. On holiday?
No.
No, Leslie. It isn't true. Oh, beg pardon, ma'am.
Miss.
Yes, of course, yes. Have to be, wouldn't it?
Damn fool. I suppose I'll be expected to tend to his wolves after he piles up, if I don't feel at that. No one injured, at least. No apparent damage to the cars. Young fool must lead a charmed life.
That's the lot. My money's on the servants. The servant's usually always the guilty one in the end.
Welcome to Stickle, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Davis, the harbour master.
Sorry. Waiting for me.
That's everyone then. The other bags are already on board the boat now.
Blimey. It must be him. In the flesh.
All set, Narracot?
Ready, sir.
Right. I'll leave it to you then. Sea's calm. Should be a pleasant crossing. If you leave now, there's a squall coming. I can smell it.
Why is it called Shipwreck Island?
Well, the weather can turn nasty quickly. There are many submerged rocks, lots of wrecks hereabouts, and that big rock at the tip is said to resemble a beached schooner. The locals call it Ship Rock.
You're not from around these parts, then, Mr. Narracot?
No, sir, I'm not.
It will never work.
If you would be so good as to follow that path up to the house, my wife will show you to your rooms. I expect you'd all like to freshen up after your journey. Where's Fred?
Under the weather. I took his place.
You'd be the brother then. I see the resemblance. Will you help me with the bags?
Yes. I've been hoping to get a look at the house.
Chapter 1. 10 little sailor boys went out to dine. One choked his little self, and then there were 9.
Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Narracot. Everything and everyone nicely in place. I must say I don't much like these clouds. I expect you should be heading back without delay.
Now it begins. Don't worry, Fred. I won't let you down. Just a drizzle. It's going to get much worse. Scuttled. I wonder who would have done such a thing.
Narracott, you gave me quite a turn.
Taking a stroll, Mr. Marston.
Just a short constitutional before dressing for dinner.
That storm's closing in. This drizzle's about to turn ugly.
Yes, looks beastly.
What's that you're carrying?
This? Just some paper and string I found on the beach. Roger seems like a tartar for order and cleanliness. Thought I'd help out.
Terribly nice of you.
Well, I'm heading to the house. If I were you, I'd do the same. Won't do to get caught out here when the brunt of this storm hits.
I'll be along directly, Mr. Marston.
Yes, of course, old boy. Whatever you say.
That was rather odd behavior.
Mr. Narracott, why are you still on the island?
Someone scuttled my boat.
Scuttled? Wrecked, you mean? But who on earth would do such a thing?
I intend to find out.
But that means, who will come for us on Monday?
Unless this storm lets up, no one.
Dear me, dear me. Come in, come in. You'll catch your death out here. I must help my wife prepare dinner. I'll have her fix you up something in the kitchen.
Thank you.
Where he's going to sleep, I'll never know. Ethel won't like this one bit.
It'll never work, I tell you. We should never have agreed. A house party only a week after we arrive? And no other help?
Ethel, calm yourself.
You promised me. Never again, you said.
How was I to know? Mr. Narracott. Ethel will be preparing you a meal in here once the guests are served.
It's a press. Looks like it can hold quite a large amount of fruit. There are some batteries buried under here. That came apart rather easily. I copied the contents into my notebook. I copied the contents into my notebook.
Would you just look at all these silk sheets? All embroidered GS. I'll bet that was that actress who used to live here. But I've dropped them on this filthy floor.
Can I give you a hand, Mrs. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Narracott. You seem like a good sort. I'm sorry for your boat.
It's tightly locked.
Nothing out of order in here. I'd best not take anything, though. I'm sure he would notice.
I copied the contents into my notebook. I copied the contents into my notebook.
Once a bent copper, always a bent copper. Right, Fred?
You're talking through your hat. You were the Purcell gang's inside man on the force, not my brother.
Your brother? Don't try to kid me, Fred. There's still a handsome reward out for you.
Fred is my brother. I'm Patrick Fane.
No reason for me to believe you that I can see. There's still a big reward out for Fred Fane.
You scuttled my boat to trap me here.
You recognized me, too. I saw it in your eyes.
Only because Davis showed Fred the passenger list yesterday. I came in my brother's place. We didn't think you might mistake me for him. Fred is 8 years older than me. Look closely, Blore.
You do look young, I noticed that. Thought it must be the sea air.
You were taking the Purcells' bribes for years. After the Landor case, people began to ask questions. The Purcells needed what the Yank detective novels call a fall guy. My brother was framed, you were in the clear.
Your whole story sounds like a detective novel.
I've never stopped trying to clear Fred's name and put you in Dartmoor prison where you belong. Thanks to your greed, I may now have that chance.
Maybe you're Patrick, maybe you're Fred. I don't know, and I don't much care. You're either a criminal, or you've been harboring one all these years. I wonder what my fellow guests will think of that. Go on, Mr. Narracott. Hop it. I need to prepare for dinner.
Narracott? I thought you'd be long gone by now. That storm's getting pretty fierce.
Somebody scuttled my boat.
I saw Blore watching you like a hawk eyes its dinner. Could it have been him?
Possibly.
Any idea why?
I'd rather not say.
Suit yourself. I'd better get ready for dinner.
Oh, Mr. Narracott, I thought that you'd left us.
Someone scuttled my boat.
Oh, but that's dreadful. Surely the harbour master will send another boat when you're missed.
Not in this storm, I'm afraid. And even then, it won't be reported.
Why ever not?
My brother. He knew I might not be immediately back.
I'm terribly sorry for your trouble. The Owens should be arriving shortly. I'm sure you can get a ride back in that boat. If you'll excuse me, I must get ready for dinner.
Yes? Oh, Mr. Narracott, I had a question for you. Have you heard anything in Stickle Haven about this house being set up as a guest house?
No, Miss Brent.
No. Mrs. Rogers hasn't either. And who are the Owens?
I haven't met them yet.
Would it surprise you to learn neither have Mr. and Mrs. Rogers? It's odd. Very odd. If you'll excuse me, Mr. Narracott, I must make dinner preparations.
My wife is indisposed, not receiving visitors today.
Your wife, sir?
What?
Your wife?
My wife, yes. Leslie. I'm sorry, my boy. I was wool gathering, miles away. My apologies. Must dress for dinner now. Send my orderly to me, if you will. No, that's not right. Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Narracott. Everything and everyone nicely in place. I must say I don't much like these clouds. I expect you should be heading back without delay.
Now it begins. Don't worry, Fred. I won't let you down. Oh, just a drizzle. It's going to get much worse. Scuttled. I wonder who would have done such a thing.
Narracott, you gave me quite a turn.
Taking a stroll, Mr. Marston?
Just a short constitutional before dressing for dinner.
That storm's closing in. This drizzle's about to turn ugly.
Yes, looks beastly.
What's that you're carrying?
This? Just some paper and string I found on the beach. Roger seems like a tartar for order and cleanliness. Thought I'd help out.
Terribly nice of you.
Well, I'm heading to the house. If I were you, I'd do the same. Won't do to get caught out here when the brunt of this storm hits.
I'll be along directly, Mr. Marston.
Yes, of course, old boy. Whatever you say.
That was rather odd behavior.
Mr. Narracott, why are you still on the island?
Someone scuttled my boat.
Scuttled? Wrecked, you mean? But who on earth would do such a thing?
I intend to find out.
But that means, who will come for us on Monday?
Unless this storm lets up, no one.
Dear me, dear me. Come in, come in. You'll catch your death out here. I must help my wife prepare dinner. I'll have her fix you up something in the kitchen.
Thank you.
Where he's going to sleep, I'll never know. Ethel won't like this one bit.
It'll never work, I tell you. We should never have agreed. A house party only a week after we arrive? And no other help?
Ethel, calm yourself.
You promised me. Never again, you said.
How was I to know? Mr. Narracott. Ethel will be preparing you a meal in here, once the guests are served.
It's a press. Looks like it can hold quite a large amount of fruit.
There are some batteries buried under here. That came apart rather easily. I copied the contents into my notebook. I copied the contents into my notebook.
Would you just look at all these silk sheets? All embroidered GS. I'll bet that was that actress who used to live here. But I've dropped them on this filthy floor.
Can I give you a hand, Mrs. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Narracott. You seem like a good sort. I'm sorry for your boat.
It's tightly locked.
Nothing out of order in here. I'd best not take anything, though. I'm sure he would notice.
I copied the contents into my notebook. I copied the contents into my notebook.
Once a bent copper, always a bent copper. Right, Fred?
You're talking through your hat. You were the Purcell gang's inside man on the force, not my brother.
Your brother? Don't try to kid me, Fred. There's still a handsome reward out for you.
Fred is my brother. I'm Patrick Fane.
No reason for me to believe you that I can see. There's still a big reward out for Fred Fane.
You scuttled my boat to trap me here.
You recognized me, too. I saw it in your eyes.
Only because Davis showed Fred the passenger list yesterday. I came in my brother's place. We didn't think you might mistake me for him. Fred is 8 years older than me. Look closely, Blore.
You do look young, I noticed that. Thought it must be the sea air.
You were taking the Purcell's bribes for years. After the Landor case, people began to ask questions. The Purcells needed what the Yank detective novels call a fall guy. My brother was framed, you were in the clear.
Your whole story sounds like a detective novel.
I've never stopped trying to clear Fred's name and put you in Dartmoor prison where you belong. Thanks to your greed, I may now have that chance.
Maybe you're Patrick, maybe you're Fred. I don't know, and I don't much care. You're either a criminal, or you've been harboring one all these years. I wonder what my fellow guests will think of that. Go on, Mr. Narracott. Hop it. I need to prepare for dinner.
Narracott? I thought you'd be long gone by now. That storm's getting pretty fierce.
Somebody scuttled my boat.
I saw Blore watching you like a hawk eyes its dinner. Could it have been him?
Possibly.
Any idea why?
I'd rather not say.
Suit yourself. I'd better get ready for dinner.
Oh, Mr. Narracott, I thought that you'd left us.
Someone scuttled my boat.
Oh, but that's dreadful. Surely the harbour master will send another boat when you're missed.
Not in this storm, I'm afraid. And even then, it won't be reported.
Why ever not?
My brother. He knew I might not be immediately back.
I'm terribly sorry for your trouble. The Owens should be arriving shortly. I'm sure you can get a ride back in that boat. If you'll excuse me, I must get ready for dinner.
Yes? Oh, Mr. Narracott, I had a question for you. Have you heard anything in Stickle Haven about this house being set up as a guest house?
No, Miss Brent.
No. Mrs. Rogers hasn't either. And who are the Owens?
I haven't met them yet.
Would it surprise you to learn neither have Mr. and Mrs. Rogers? It's odd. Very odd. If you'll excuse me, Mr. Narracott, I must make dinner preparations.
My wife is indisposed, not receiving visitors today.
Your wife, sir?
What?
Your wife?
My wife, yes. Leslie. I'm sorry, my boy. I was wool gathering, miles away. My apologies. Must dress for dinner now. Send my orderly to me, if you will. No, that's not right. What was I thinking? I must get ready for dinner now.
It's locked fast.
You're shot, Judge.
Yes. You haven't left me much, I confess.
I knew judges listened to confessions. I never knew they made them as well.
Oh, some judges may have cause. Some doctors as well, I expect.
That sounds like the dinner bell.
Mr. Narracott, unfortunately we are not prepared for your presence at dinner. I would be most happy to deliver you a sandwich later this evening, if that will do.
That will be fine, Rogers. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, if you will excuse me, I must get to serving.
By all means. I can hear them all in the dining room chattering. I can't quite make out what they're saying. This might be a good time to explore the house more thoroughly. Aha! With my ear against the door, conversation becomes quite clear.
Wine, Doctor?
No, thank you, Rogers. I never touch alcohol. Except for sterilizing wounds or instruments, of course.
I tried to collect some apples from an orchard on the island, but a bee stung me. I'm afraid I dropped the basket and ran. No need to apologize. I myself am dreadfully allergic to bees, wasps, hornets. I'm sorry to hear there are bees here. Oh, you must take care. There's all sorts of those bee house things. What do you call it?
An apiary.
Oh, I thought that was for monkeys.
Ethel!
Miss Claythorne, we've never met, but I do seem to recall your name.
Oh?
Yes, from when I stayed at that stuffy old hotel near St. Trednick. Do you know it?
No. No, I don't think so.
Really? How extraordinary. I was so shocked.
Narracott says he's not Fred Fane, but his brother. It may well be, but he bears watching.
Seems like such a nice man.
They said the same thing about Stevenson, the child murderer. I confess I've never met our host, Mr. Owen. What kind of a man is he? Rogers?
We haven't seen the Owens either, sir. We were only engaged a week ago by letter, and asked to make the house ready.
So no one has actually met the Owens.
How extraordinary.
I, for one, will have some sharp questions for the Owens when they do arrive.
These are very expensive linens. I bet they're very strong. I copied the contents into my notebook.
Let me examine this further. This bears a closer look. It appears to be a portrait of the general. Must be quite old. He's standing with a very young woman. It's signed, "To John, my husband, Leslie." I copied the contents into my notebook. This is quite a makeup supply. Emily must be more concerned with aging than she lets on. I copied the contents into my notebook. This is certainly a clue of some sort. I copied the contents into my notebook. This could use a closer look. I think I recognize this lady. Perhaps she owned the house in the past. Who knows? She may still. I'd almost swear I recognize that chap. Does he have the eyes of a killer? This is a fairly sparse makeup case. Vera isn't the type to use much makeup, though. I copied the contents into my notebook. I copied the contents into my notebook. I copied the contents into my notebook. I transcribed the pertinent passages in my notebook.
I copied the contents into my notebook. That came apart rather easily. Aha! With my ear against the door, the conversation becomes quite clear.
Did anyone else see the poem over the fireplace?
10 little sailor boys? Yes, I saw it.
And here before us as the centerpiece of our table are the 10 little sailor boys themselves, all looking correct and polished.
I like a neat and tidy house, Your Honor.
Robson, the man who built this house, was a sailor. Perhaps Mr. Owen inherited them from him.
Another question for Mr. Owen.
As I remember, the rhyme was about soldier boys. Highly inappropriate, as I recall.
There are many variations.
You seem to know quite a bit about it, Miss Claythorne.
I was a governess before seeking secretarial work. Governesses spend a lot of time with nursery rhymes.
All gratuitously gruesome, if you ask me. So much violence in the world today.
Sometimes violence is necessary, Miss Brent.
There speaks a soldier for you.
A realist, Miss Brent, not a dreamer. If action needs to be taken, I, for one, am fully prepared to take it.
How does the famous rhyme go, Miss Claythorne?
Must we harp on this topic at dinner?
Miss Brent may be right, Mr. Marston. The rhyme is a bit gruesome. It's there over the fireplace in the parlour if you care to have a look later.
If you think so. Excellent meal, Rogers. My compliments to both you and your good woman. You've done your employers proud.
Thank you, sir, ladies and gentlemen. Most gratifying, I'm sure. After dinner drinks will be served in the front parlour.
Ladies and gentlemen, silence please. This is your host, UN Owen. You are charged with the following indictments. Edward George Armstrong, that you did, upon the 14th day of March 1925, cause the death of Louisa Mary Cleese. Emily Caroline Brent, that upon the 5th of November 1931, you were responsible for the death of Beatrice Taylor. William Henry Blore, that you brought about the death of James Stephen Landor on October 10th, 1928. Vera Elizabeth Claythorne, that on the 11th day of August 1935, you killed Cyril Ogilvy Hamilton. Philip Lombard, that upon a date in February 1932, you were guilty of the death of 21 men, members of an East African tribe. John Gordon Mackenzie, that on the 4th of January 1917, you deliberately sent your wife's lover, Arthur Richmond, to his death. Anthony James Marston, that upon the 14th day of November last, you were guilty of the murder of John and Lucy Combs. Thomas Rogers and Ethel Rogers, that on the 6th of May, 1929, you brought about the death of Jennifer Brady, Lawrence John Wargrave, that upon the 10th day of June, 1934, you were guilty of the murder of Edward Seaton. Prisoners at the bar, have you anything to say in your defense?
Doctor! I only fainted, Rogers. I'm sure she'll be fine. Narracott, you get my bag from my room?
Yes, of course.
Stout fellow. Master, in a moment I'll want help to get her to her room. Of course. Behind the kitchen, is it, Rogers?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. You can use that door.
Thank you, Mr. Narracott. I am in your debt.
Now, Rogers, tell us about that extraordinary voice.
It was Mr. Owen, sir. In his letter, he wrote to me to put it on the gramophone once you were all settled in here after dinner.
That was Mr. Owen's voice?
You doubt that it was?
No. I thought I recognized it. I'm sure I'm mistaken.
A disgraceful practical joke.
You think it was a joke?
What else could it be?
I will need to hear more evidence before offering an opinion.
Mr. Marston and I carried Mrs. Rogers to her room. I gave her a mild sedative. She's resting comfortably.
Whoever it was on that recording, that person knows or has taken the trouble to find out a good deal about us all. He was correct about Seaton. I presided at the trial, but all I did was execute a guilty man.
I remember the case. As I recall, there was some talk.
Happily, guilt and innocence are decided by those of us qualified to make a judgment, not by gossip. Of course, there is one omission in that recording. Mr. Narracott, of course. Although to hear Mr. Blore tell it, he might have earned a place on that list, had Mr. Owen been so inclined.
Any truth to the accusation against you?
It's a matter of interpretation, you understand. But I'd have to say, yes.
Will you tell me how it happened?
Elderly woman. Poor devil. I'd been up all night with an emergency case. My nerves were shot, hands shaking. But I had to operate. I had to try and save her. I had a pick-me-up or two to steady myself, but I bungled it. It wasn't the drink, I swear. It was an accident. Could have happened to anyone in my profession.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
Owen sent me a note, asking me to have a look at his wife, who's been suffering from arthritis and muscle spasms.
What was the gossip concerning the Seaton case?
I'm not one to spread gossip to just anyone about a man as distinguished as Justice Wargrave. If I was certain about it, perhaps. But I'm not.
Thank you for your time, Doctor. Any truth to the accusation against you?
The name sounded vaguely familiar. I expect it will come to me.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
Got a wire from a pal of mine, Badger Barkley. Surprised me at the time because I had an idea the old horse had gone to Norway. Told me to roll up here.
That will be all, Marston. Any truth to the accusation against you?
There isn't a word of truth in it. Miss Brady was always in poor health. Always. From the time we came to her.
Will you tell me how it happened?
There was a storm, as fierce as the one brewing outside right now when she was taken bad. The telephone was out of order. I went for the doctor on foot, but he got there too late.
Were you mentioned in the will?
Barely. Certainly not what we were led to believe. She was just saying it, you see, to ensure our devotion to her. Beg pardon. I'm not sure what came over me just then. The strain of tonight, I expect, and worry over Mrs. Rogers, of course.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
Isn't that obvious, sir? My wife and I were hired through an agency in Plymouth. Manservant, housekeeper, cook. That's what we are.
I appreciate your candor, Mr. Rogers. Any truth to the accusation against you?
I admit it's a ghastly story, but I can't say it's wrong. Owen did his research well. The accusation is absolutely true.
Will you tell me how it happened?
It was written up in the papers at the time. A story of self-preservation, pure and simple. A hunting party lost in the bush. The great white hunter checks the food supplies, assesses his chances, and clears out on his own.
Leaving 21 men to die.
Not very puka sahib, I'm afraid.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
Owen's attorney, a man named Archibald Morris, rang up one day. Wanted to give me 100 guineas to join this house party. I was to put myself at Owen's disposal in case my rather specialized talents were required.
What specialized talents would those be?
You might say I'm a good man in a scrap.
Good evening, Mr. Longbow. Any truth to the accusation against you?
Fellow got hold of a detestable rumor, nothing more. Arthur Richmond was one of my officers. I sent him on a reconnaissance, he was killed. Natural course of events in wartime.
Thank you, General. Stay well. Any truth to the accusation against you?
About that child, Cyril Hamilton. I was nursery governess to him.
Will you tell me how it happened?
I'd like to tell you. Cyril was forbidden to swim out far. One day, my attention was distracted. I couldn't get there in time. It was awful. But it wasn't my fault. At the inquest, the coroner exonerated me. Oh, and his mother. She was so kind. If she didn't blame me, why should this awful thing be said?
Are you sure you're telling me everything?
I'm telling you all I'm going to, Mr. Narracott.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
I was engaged through an agency to be Mrs. Owen's secretary. Nothing remarkable in that, is there?
A good evening to you, Miss Claythorne. Stay safe. Any truth to the accusation against you?
I remember Seaton perfectly well. Playwright, charged with the murder of a chorus girl. He was found guilty. Hung himself in his cell 3 days later. Saved the Crown the expense of doing it for him.
Good evening, Judge. Any truth to the accusation against you?
Look, Narracott, if that's what you want to call yourself. The rules have changed. Can't you see that? The past is past. It's the present we should be worrying about. Something is not right here.
Will you tell me how it happened?
All right. Perhaps I was doing the odd favor for the Purcells. But if your brother was framed, I had nothing to do with it. Yes, they paid me to perjure myself about Landor. Thanks to them, I was able to put enough away to set up my own detective agency. Nothing fancy. I've been straight ever since, I swear.
Landor died.
He got penal servitude for life and died in Dartmoor a year later. Not my fault he was such a delicate man.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
I run a little detective agency in Plymouth these days. I'm on a job. Protect Mrs. Owen's jewels, the letter said. Mrs. Owen, my foot. I don't believe there's any such person.
Thanks, Blore. Any truth to the accusation against you?
I have always acted in accordance with the dictates of my conscience. I have nothing with which to reproach myself.
Will you tell me how it happened?
It was some time before I found out she was what they call in trouble. Her parents were decent folk, too. I'm glad to say they did not condone her behavior when I told them of it.
What happened to Beatrice?
Naturally, I did not keep her an hour under my roof. No one shall ever say that Emily Brent condoned immorality.
How did she die?
Not content with having one sin on her conscience, she committed a still graver sin. She took her own life, threw herself in the river. If she had behaved like a decent young woman, she'd be alive today.
You have no regrets?
She made an excellent breakfast. I miss that. Fresh juice every day.
What brought you here to Shipwreck Island?
I received a letter with a signature that was not very easy to read. It purported to be from a woman I'd met at a certain summer resort 2 or 3 years ago. I am quite certain I have never met or become friendly with anyone of the name of Owen.
I overheard you mention St. Trednick to Miss Claythorne.
I was staying at a seaside hotel near St. Trednick this same week of August 4 years ago. That boy Cyril Hamilton drowned near there. It was the talk of the town. His half-brother was much older. Hugo, I think his name was. Cyril was a vile child, by all accounts, but first in line for the family title and estates. When he died, it all went to Hugo. He was just about Miss Claythorne's age. There was talk of something between them.
You're suggesting Vera let the boy drown so the man she loved could inherit?
That would be idle gossip. I don't indulge in idle gossip. I've only told you the facts of the case as I remember them.
I won't take up any more of your time, Miss Brent.
Interesting history Shipwreck Island has. I'd studied up on it before I came down.
What are the names of those 2 people I'm accused of killing?
John and Lucy Combs. I made a note of it.
Must have been a couple of kids I ran over near Cambridge. Beastly bad luck.
For them or for you?
Well, I was thinking for me, but of course you're right, sir. It was damned bad luck on them. Of course it was a pure accident. They rushed out of some cottage or other. Beastly nuisance. English roads are hopeless, of course. Can't get up a decent pace on them. Well, anyway, it wasn't my fault. This man is dead.
Did Marston choke to death?
You can call it choking if you like. He died of asphyxiation, right enough.
Was Marston poisoned?
Can't say exactly. Everything points to one of the cyanides. No distinctive smell of prussic acid. Probably potassium cyanide. It acts pretty well instantaneously.
Was there something in the whiskey?
Yes, without a doubt.
Do you think it was suicide?
Seems like it.
Could he have been murdered?
Not my line of country. I'm a doctor, not a detective.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
Not I. Personally or professionally.
What do you think that record means?
A disgraceful and heartless practical joke, I suppose.
Good evening, Doctor. Do you think it was suicide?
You conduct yourself well, Mr. Narracott, if you don't mind my saying so. Mr. Blore has told us that you are not what you appear, yet you told him you were not a detective.
No, sir. But I've read many detective novels. I even had one of those junior detective kits when I was a boy. Magnifying glass, fingerprint powder.
Junior detective kit? Wonderful. Ah, an amateur sleuth then. You appear to have something of a gift for it.
About the suicide, Judge.
I'm not yet prepared to offer an opinion.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
I knew his father, the Duke, and his elder brother. Like so many younger sons of his class, Anthony Marsden was a bit of a wastrel, as you will have gathered. There were other rumors of late, of his dabbling in politics, but this is not the proper forum for that discussion.
What do you think that record means?
May I answer that in a moment after asking a question of my own?
Of course.
Does anyone know Mr. Owen's full name?
My letter was signed only U.N. Owen.
Yes, U.N. Owen. Or, by a slight stretch of fancy, unknown. I'll now answer your question, Mr. Narracott. The name, the recording, the circumstances under which all but you were lured to this island. I have no doubt in my mind that we have been invited here by a madman. Very possibly a dangerous, homicidal lunatic.
Why did you retire, Judge?
I know there was talk about my competence, even my ego running wild, but the truth of it is very simple. My health. A lifetime sentencing my fellow man, and now a higher power has passed judgment on me.
I am grateful for your assistance, Judge Wargrave. Do you think Marston committed suicide?
I shouldn't have said Mr. Marston was a suicidal type of gentleman at all.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
Never clapped eyes on him. And who gave you the authority to question us?
You're under no obligation to answer me. What do you think that record means?
I don't like it. Not one bit. Very queer, the whole situation.
Good evening, Mr. Blore. Do you think Marston committed suicide?
Yes. In my experience, certain types of individuals, when faced with their sin, will then commit the greater one.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
No.
What do you think that record means?
There is something very peculiar about it.
That is all, Miss Brett. Do you think Marston committed suicide?
He didn't seem particularly remorseful. Of course, the record might have set him off somehow. A new incident long after the fact may create a strong feeling of guilt or fear. Wouldn't you say, Doctor?
Possible. Quite possible.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
Heard of him, but we'd never crossed paths or swords.
What do you think that record means?
There is something wrong with this entire weekend, and especially with our host, Mr. Owen.
I believe we're all coming around to that conclusion.
Yes, but I know something you don't, Judge.
What is that?
I recognize the voice on that recording, and it was definitely not Mr. Owen.
Who was it?
Not so fast, Narracott. Not until I think things through a bit more.
Thank you, Lombard. Do you think Marston committed suicide?
You'd never think he would kill himself. He was so alive. When he came down that hill in his car, he looked... Oh, I can't explain.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
No. I'm sure I would have remembered.
Steady, Miss Claythorne. The lad had his faults, you know.
What do you think that record means?
It was unfair, what it said. Very unfair.
You seem to be a remarkably perceptive girl, Miss Claythorne.
Why, thank you, Mr. Narracott.
Is there anything you can tell me about our fellow castaways?
Castaways? You make it sound so...
Romantic?
I was going to say dramatic. Let me see. No one has confided any secrets to me, I'm afraid. Oh, except one.
That is...
I really don't know you well enough to answer you.
A pleasure as always, Miss Claythorne.
Let me examine this further. I wonder what's recorded on this side.
Do you think it was suicide?
How dare you! My wife died of natural causes, sir. A long illness, nothing more.
I meant Marston.
Marston? No honor in him that I could see.
Did you know Marston before he arrived here today?
No, I don't think so. Not a military man, I'd wager. Lombard now. He reminds me of someone from my command. But the name wasn't Lombard.
What do you think that record means?
Ugly. After 30 years. Ugly thing to say.
Thank you, General.
Where have you been, Rogers?
I went to check on my wife, sir. She is resting comfortably. But I'm afraid I have some distressing news.
Oh?
One of the china figures of a sailor boy has been broken off.
Chapter 2. 9 little sailor boys sat up very late. One overslept himself, and then there were 8.
Filthy night. I tried to go out to get some more wood for the fire, but the wind drove me back.
A storm like that will keep us all indoors.
My apologies for the accommodations, Mr. Narracott, but all the beds are taken.
Makes one wonder where the Owens were planning to sleep, doesn't it?
A good servant follows instructions, sir. He does not question his employer, unless you'd like to share the deceased's room with the corpse.
This will do fine. Thank you, Rogers.
I'll wish you a good night then, sir.
Everyone should be sound asleep by now. Good time for a little stealth work.
Wargrave on justice. I can only imagine the egotism that lurks within those pages. Let me examine this further. This could use a closer look. Property of Teresa Robson. I transcribed the interesting passages into my notebook. I transcribed the pertinent passages in my notebook. Normally, I would never violate someone's privacy this way. However, given the circumstances, I will examine the entries for clues and transcribe any passages I find pertinent. I transcribed the pertinent passages in my notebook. I transcribed the pertinent passages in my notebook. I transcribed the pertinent passages in my notebook. a rather beautifully made globe of the world. It's a book holder. Seems like a long time since it's been used. I've already learned all I can.
I'm pleased to see at least one of you has thought to turn the record over. Any good house party should include party games. This weekend is no exception. I have devised several little games of the mind to challenge your wits, and I hope you find the rewards for each to be worth the effort. You'll have to discover my little amusements on your own, however. I've scattered them all over this delightful island retreat. I hope that you will find them suitably entertaining.
It's really dark up there. I need a light source. That works. Just barely. I can't open it. It's locked.
It's tightly locked. It's locked fast. He's as tight as an owl. I expect nothing could wake him up. Morning is coming. I'd best get back to my bed. Well, I didn't get much rest, but at least I have something to show for it. I'd best see if everyone has come down for breakfast.
If what Narracott told Vera is true, and mind you, I take anything he says with a grain of salt, then they will not be sending a boat until at least Monday, even if the storm clears.
Wise to remember, Narracott's the odd man out here.
Yes, thanks to you, I believe, Blore.
At least nothing else has occurred.
I hope you are correct, Miss Claythorne. However, I feel compelled to draw your attention to this table's centerpiece.
Now 2 are broken. How odd.
Ah, Mr. Narracott, good morning. Since Mr. Marsden won't be joining us, there is an extra place for breakfast, although breakfast itself seems to be a trifle behind schedule.
I'm afraid there is no breakfast at present. Mrs. Rogers has not been able to carry on this morning.
What's the matter with the woman? I was promised fresh apple juice this morning.
I must tell you a sad piece of news. Mrs. Rogers died in her sleep.
Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
She was a very skittish creature. And she had a shock last night. It might have been heart failure.
Her heart certainly failed to beat. What caused it to fail is the question.
Did you hear anything in the night?
No, my sleep was quite restful.
Thank you for your time, Miss Claythorne. You're a detective, Mr. Blore. Any theories?
I appreciate you recognizing the fact there's a professional present. I'd like to know what she had to eat or drink last night before she collapsed.
Rogers assures me she had nothing whatsoever.
Of course he would say that. But see here. They've done a murder and gotten away with it. Now she's all hysterical, likely to give the show away. She's a danger to her husband, that's what she is.
Oh, I should hardly think a man would do that to his wife.
You said you knew something about the history of this island.
Most of the old stuff can be found in the library. Its more recent history is just as interesting, though. But I'm not inclined to divulge that just yet.
That is all for now, Mr. Blore. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
I'm sure Mrs. Rogers wasn't to blame. A good, loyal woman.
Did you hear anything in the night?
I thought I heard a voice calling my name. My wife, she died several years ago. I expect it was a dream.
General, you said you thought you recognized Lombard.
Did I? Yes, I expect I did. But I fail to see what business it might be of yours.
Thank you, General. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
Conscience.
What do you mean by that?
She was accused, together with her husband, of having deliberately murdered her former employer, an old lady. You all saw her last night. She broke down completely. The shock of her wickedness brought home to her was too much to bear. She literally died of fear.
Possibly, if there was cardiac weakness.
Call it, if you prefer, an act of God.
That is all, Miss Brent.
Perhaps this will grant the aging general increased mobility.
Are you sure you can't tell me how you recognize Mr. Lombard?
Lombard, yes. He does look familiar. But the name is wrong. Or is it? I'm sorry, young man. My memory plays tricks on me.
Thank you, General. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death?
We know that she consumed something last night. Dr. Armstrong told us so.
I, Mr. Lombard?
You gave her a sedative.
A small dose of Trianol, nothing more.
Doctors have made mistakes before.
You're suggesting I accidentally gave Mrs. Rogers an overdose?
Accidentally or otherwise. One death may have been an accident or suicide, but two in the space of a few hours?
Simply outrageous, man of my standing.
Any more questions, Mr. Narracott?
Did you hear anything in the night?
I'm a very light sleeper. In future, I hope everyone will bear that in mind. Yes, several times I heard something.
You didn't investigate?
With a judge, a detective, and an amateur sleuth in the house, you hardly need my poor skills in that line. I prefer to keep watch.
The hunter in his blind?
A good analogy, Judge.
You said you recognized Owen's voice.
I've had time to think it over, and I'm sure I did. I see no reason to share that information with you.
Good day to you, Mr. Lombard. What was the cause of death?
Impossible to say offhand.
There must be an autopsy.
I certainly couldn't give a certificate without one.
When did you find out?
Rogers roused me at first light. He'd gotten up to light the stove and see to the power generator before waking her. When she didn't respond, he got me.
Can you tell when she died?
Without an autopsy, not for certain, but it must have been some hours ago. The body was, quite cold.
Did you hear anything in the night?
No, although it appears I should have.
That is all for now, Dr. Armstrong. Any theories about Mrs. Rogers' death, Judge?
I'm afraid it confirms my opinion that there is something very wrong on this island. It occurs to me that if these two deaths were not suicides or accidents, that Mr. Owen may very well be responsible. If so, he is almost certainly on this island somewhere.
I agree. I think we should find a way off this island immediately.
Did you hear anything in the night?
I confess I slept fitfully. Marsden's death, the storm, but I heard nothing. Possibly also due to the storm.
Understandable, Judge. Quite understandable.
Mr. Narracott, can your boat be repaired?
I doubt very seriously it can be repaired. Mr. Blore did a good job.
Steady on. I didn't know then how the land lay, did I?
So you say.
If you find a means of leaving the island or of signaling the mainland, I'm sure we would all be in your debt.
And I'm sure all of us would help in any way we could.
Here.
We're never going to leave the island. None of us are ever going to leave.
What were you hinting at concerning Marston's politics?
Only that he'd become mixed up with some foreigners. I think that's all I'd better say at present.
I appreciate your candor, Judge.